Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mansur Saab, are you coming? All right. So maybe we should start the session. My name is Aftab Haider. I'm the CEO of the Pakistan Single Window, and I think I should start by thanking SEED, CDPR, and IGC for giving me the opportunity to moderate the session. Somebody who is involved in the digitization of cross-border trade and has a very specific customs background, I feel like a fish out of water. Uh, Listening to all these brilliant discussions on taxation and how different types of taxes collection and enforcement can be improved. This session that is going to be led by Mansoor Sultan Saab is more about digitalization and how digitalization can help improve the efficiency and effectiveness of tax administrations. And maybe my presence here is also symbolic as an example of a federal government entity that is quickly emerging as a model of excellence, not only nationally, but also internationally for the kind of work that we are doing. And maybe there would be a separate session sometimes later, hopefully, where we can talk about the single window experience and what we have done right, what have we done to learn from the experiences of other countries in order to make sure that this reform that does not only involve digitization, but also a lot of business process reengineering, a lot of legal reform does take off successfully. But right now, we are going to focus more on the nexus between digitalization and improvement of the provincial taxes. And before I hand it over to Mansoor Saab, I think it's important to just set the tone here for the discussion that we would be having during this session. Digitalization has been one of the focus areas for most of the tax administrations around the world. We have seen a lot of innovation coming out, especially in the last decade, and especially in the last few years with the advent of AI that has even taking over machine learning and deep learning and other technologies that are probably going to help make tax collection more efficient. But the question probably that we should be asking is, do we really understand digitalization? When we talk about digitalization, does it mean just replacing manual processes with a more digitized version, like Mushtaba Saab said about apps being developed but no real reform being done at the back end? Or does digitalization go beyond that to embrace a more holistic concept that would also incorporate some of the behavioral insights that have been discussed this morning? For example, in my work that I do, there is a very specific concept that we use, whether the system that we are building is user-centric or user-driven. And there's a slight difference in that, because when you talk about a user-centric system, basically you are assuming the user's needs. But when you're talking about a user-driven system, what we are doing is actually getting input from the user on how the systems can be designed that will help them improve their compliance with the tax laws. And similarly, is there a change management component that should be discussed? Is there a mindset change that should also be discussed for digitalization? And is it something that can be done on the spur of the moment, or does it also involve a lot of governance reforms and how we are going to manage data that's coming into the system? So these are some of the questions. Mansoor Saab is joined by an excellent list of discussants, and I think most of them have been introduced, except for Dr. Aisha and Abdul Hamid Mebin Saab, who I would be introducing as after the presentation when we draw on their experiences of FPR and Sindh Revenue Board and how they have leveraged ICT for improving tax collection. Mansoor Sultan Saab, I don't think you need an introduction, but I'm going to make a formal introduction just in case. Mansoor Sultan is currently working as the Chief Information Officer for the Marriott Group of Companies and has also served as the Chief Information Officer, where I came into contact with him first time at the Federal Board of Revenue, where he was involved in implementing FPR's digitalization strategy and act as a technical advisor to the Chairman FPR for the restructuring of FPR's IT wing. Mansoor comes with a rich and diverse experience in digital transformation, particularly in the banking sector, having worked at various roles at HSBC, Saudi British Bank, and various banks in Pakistan. Mansoor Saab, it's over to you.
I feel like a fish out of water. I don't know where I am because my experience has mostly been all private sector, except for the 14-month stint at FPR. So I'll kick off with that. Now, there is. I'm so glad to hear a lot of talk about IT and how IT will empower things, and also about transformation. So when you talk about transformation, it basically is people and process. Forget about the digital part of it for now. It's people and process. And and this is well known, over 70% of transformations fail because of non-adoption of whatever is done, a new process being designed or a new system being designed and implemented, etc., etc. So that is where we need to focus on. Biggest amount of friction comes in when people refuse to accept the change that is coming up. So that is very, very important. Now, I got a bit slow in talking about this, but now digital transformation, obviously you add the technology piece. And this is textbook definition of digital transformation. However, when I talk about transformation, I add data and governance into it. Absolutely critical for us to think about that because of the fact that a lot of, I mean, I'm fascinated by the amount of work that has been done around the table by representatives from the various PRAs. And of course, we can very clearly see that there are gold mines of data being developed, but they are all disparate. They're all spread out. They're all separated, and they aren't talking to each other. That is where I think the biggest piece comes in. Now, whenever data comes in, there has to be a governance piece to it. Who owns the data? What is the data that is being made available? So I was just a month ago, I was back in Islamabad for a Pakistan digital stack discussion. Now that was also one of the biggest discussions in there was who owns the data. And I think a lot of the public sector definitions is the public sector entities own the data. That's a completely wrong. If you look at it globally, it's the citizen who owns the data. It is their data. It is data pertaining to them. And therefore, the citizen owns the data. And you may have seen NADRA has recently released a consent-based verification of data now. So whenever a varices or whatever happens, a SMS comes out to the assigned phone number, and they have to give consent that, yes, allow this data to go out. So that is where this is the first baby step on that journey. And again, we talk a bit about digitization, digital transformation. That's why I wanted to get this graphic in. Now, digitization, and these are interchangeably used a lot of times. And that is also something that we need to improve our definition on and our understanding on. Digitization basically takes a paper form and puts it into a digital form. So if you're collecting something, you send out a Google form, it just puts it into a Google Sheet, that's it. But as soon as you start to then automate a process behind it, streamline that process, and actually start to make some knowledge-based decisions out of it, that is what is called digitalization. And of course, take it further, you take a step back, look at the end-to-end journey. Like for example, if Saqib Saab knows this very well, I come from a banking background. So when we talk about onboarding a new customer, there have been instances, even in HSBC where I come from, onboarding a corporate customer required 21 different systems. That was just amazing for an organization like HSBC. We went ahead and transformed that whole system and cut down an onboarding process from 4.5 weeks to 2 days for a corporate customer. That's the impact that we see. And of course, when you do that, your organization just takes off from that. And that is where the biggest bang for the buck happens. So whatever you do here, and unfortunately in our organization, especially public sector, a lot of the work stops here, a bit of it expands to there, and that's about it. You don't go further. But PSW, mashallah, is a fantastic example of right there. Because they have gone across and looked at all of the stakeholders, they've looked at the entire end-to-end journey and transformed that journey into one platform, which allows trade to go work seamlessly. And that's a fantastic example. Now, the current tax administration process, and this is defined by OECD, they call it 2.0. You start with the registration, you do the assessment, there's a verification, collection, and then if there's the dispute, go into dispute. Underlying data management that happens, and on top of all the taxpayer services, which are all the channels through which you can do this work. But there are structural limitations to this because of the fact that there's a very high reliance on voluntary compliance. We talked about this earlier as well. There was one of the panelists talked about this. Making it happen actually takes a lot of effort. A lot of people don't understand the tax systems and rely on consultants and lawyers and whatnot to actually come in and help them, which is so sad for me. I was just visiting a friend of mine in Islamabad yesterday. He was talking about his entire professional life has been outside of Pakistan. He's come back 2 years ago, first time filer in Pakistan, first time set up a profile. And he said, I had to get somebody to help me. I was like, Saad, your profile should be super simple. You're an employee, you get a tax certificate from your employer, just put that into the IRS system and off you go. He said, no, I just couldn't make sense of it. So that, very clearly there are areas where we need to work. Tax is often a downstream activity. So everything done, then we talk about taxes. And of course, there is a standalone activity. So the result of that is that the broadening the taxes, the BTB exercises as they are called in the revenue authorities, has not been as successful. Now, OECD takes this further and talks about tax administration 3.0. This completely changes and transforms how taxes are done. Now, instead of having to do it at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter or end of the month for commercial taxes, this starts to get embedded into the taxpayer systems. For example, now when I joined FBR as CIO, one of the first things that I talked about was, why are we limited to actually having everyone logging into IRIS and saying that I will only work on IRIS? Why am I only allowed to work on IRIS? Look at it around the world. Oh, there are tons of taxpayer systems that allow you to do this. Quicken, for example, one of the most popular SME accounting packages, has a tax module built into it. You just do your books and the taxes get automatically calculated. And therefore, if you ask them to actually file it for you, they will even file it for you. So why can't we do this? And we don't need to reinvent the wheel, honestly speaking. It's a copy paste of, there's so much stuff out there. But वो जैसे कहते हैं कि नकल में भी अकल चाहिए, थोड़ा सा we just need to kind of follow that principle and we need to take it forward. So I'm just going to kind of quickly go through because there is a slide that I want to spend more time on. So of course, as you take 3.0 further, there's a very clear distinction that doing more of 2.0 doesn't achieve 3.0. It's a transformation. As Einstein very eloquently said, if you keep on doing the same thing that you kept on doing, you will get the same answers. You're a fool to expect something different. So that is something that we really need to take into account. Now, there are some programs that I feel I could suggest. Again, these are nudges for all the revenue authorities. Either internally or externally do a thorough self-assessment of where you are. And keeping in mind the fact that not the 2.0 standard, follow the 3.0 standard. Think about the transformation. What can you do to actually transform the organization and how you actually go about it? Should have worked. So end state is predefined. We all know where we need to get to. But what can we do to make it more seamless and frictionless for our payees? We need to develop a roadmap and prioritize the initiatives based on the bang for the buck. Very clear on that. Because a lot of the programs that are running don't deliver that bang for the buck. Either time or money or effort or whatever. We just need to kind of look at that. And, pet peeve, vehicle registration. The number of vehicles that I see out there on the roads which are applied for just irks the living being out of me. Honestly, every single day. I am renting a place in DHA Phase 6 Lahore, and I can just go and stand on, and I was telling my wife this, I just want to stand in one crossing and just record all the cars going by, the ones that are APL, APF, all kinds of iterations of applied for, and of course, the traffic violations and the correlation between them. Oh my God, most of the applied for will violate the red lights. Why? Because they feel there is impunity. Nobody can touch them. A few months ago, there was a very nice initiative by the National Highway Authority that the motorway will not allow applied for vehicles on the road. So all the paper stickers that came from the dealerships got changed to APL and APF. Very simple way to fix that thing as well. And I have a few ideas. More than welcome if somebody wants to have a conversation. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation on that. Land registry transactions, we've already talked at length about that. I'm sure that Dr. Saab has a lot of ideas that can fix that. Seamless handshakes to facilitate the cross-input adjustments. Now, a lot of times I completely understand why the devolution happened under 18th Amendment, but there are a lot of loopholes that have been created because of that, and corporations, commercials, SMEs take full advantage of that. Somebody talked about restaurants and how the input of the restaurants is, exploited with the output sales. So that's also something that can be addressed. Voice of the taxpayer. Conduct some focus sessions. You'll get a lot of insights because, as somebody also said, people want to pay their taxes. People want to do the right thing. We make it more difficult for them to actually do that, and that's why I think it's very, very important. So there's a new system going on. FBR has just started a ERP implementation thing that they have put out a tender for. I think I was talking to a friend of mine who is ex-FBR on deputation at the PRA right now. He was talking about that there is no ERP system for human resource management. Just piggyback on that. There's no need to develop something yourself. There can be multiple entities within the same instance. An automated refund system, that is again something that I was highlighted by someone at the revenue authority, provincial revenue authority, that's missing. Some of the other programs that I feel that we have to discourage cash. That is where the biggest loopholes and I guess oversight happens. And we have to encourage the move to electronic transactions. I think the fantastic example of 5% on the card transactions versus 16% on cash, that's a fantastic example of how we can move that along. When I was at FBR, I had started this initiative that I was talking about. How can we reduce flying checks? Because that is where in our wholesale markets, in Shalmi and in, I'm forgetting, sorry, at the moment, but there are so many markets out there where it's all purchase system. And we have to address that somehow. That's one of your biggest loopholes. And I have some ideas. I presented a paper on this to the one of the deputy governors at State Bank in Karachi, and they considered it a viable system. So that's something. Again, the idea is there. It can be further developed if the political will is there. Track and trace. We've already talked about this. We already deployed in the sugar industry from 2019-20 tax year to 2021 tax year, just by deploying sugar industry track and trace at 84 sugar mills, out of which 19 have a majority, like 80% of the production of sugar in the country. We went from a net importer of sugar to a net exporter of sugar. Increase of 35% production capacity just by deploying that system, because now all of the production got documented. There was no additional unit or plant installed. It was only documentation of what was going on. So that stops your smuggling out. We need to finish the work on the cement and fertilizer products, and this is something that was a part of phase 1. I was part of the technical evaluation committee for track and trace, and we did a fantastic work, got the actual project going, and then it stalled again because there is a lot of strong lobby against it. But it needs to be expanded, as it was covered in the original proposal, to steel, beverages, fuel, pharmaceuticals, domestically manufactured goods. The list is infinite, honestly. And of course, a lot of people talk about pharmaceuticals. There is no tax implication, or you don't get much out of it. But do consider that here in, for example, Islamabad, you can go to D. Watson or Shine Chemist and buy what are generally known as genuine products, right? But think about it, if you go to Toba Tek Singh or some rural area, how can you guarantee that you will get actually authentic products? So it's a service to humanity what you're going to do if you also implement on pharmaceuticals. And the last slide on this piece um, was talking about, we need to collaborate with the center sometimes. I mean, this is something that, again, we talked about in the digital stack discussion. There has to be a data exchange layer. Now, what that doesn't mean is that you don't expose your data to everyone. You actually make your data available to other systems to talk to, and the systems actually give a response based on the data that is available without exposing the data. So that is also very doable, very simple to do. And as somebody said in that discussion, technology piece is the easiest part of it. It's the consent, it's the political will, it's the willingness of the revenue authorities in the provinces and the central one to work together to actually deliver this. So we talked about the GovStack, and that is something that is being developed by even the UN. So the ITU, you may have heard of, the IT University has a complete GovStack department, and the head of ITU was there in that meeting. Point of sale, we have it on the FPR side, we have it at PRA. Somebody talked about a lottery system for whistleblowing, lottery system for actually people reporting. I was part of that. The incentives, when we published them, actually people went crazy with reporting genuine invoices. And my view was fantastic that you have that lottery, have a bigger prize lottery for people who are actually whistleblowing on the either the shops, the retailers, or the restaurants not giving you a pakki receipt, and drive that from there. And there was enough money made, believe me. The prices were self-sufficient, they were taken care of. And of course, we can expand POS to cover all types of transactions, including, so POS was designed for sales tax. It can also cover withholding tax, any type of advance tax. So any type of transaction where person A is paying person B can be made to be integrated with this. And this is a slide that I've worked really hard on and has been evolving over time. So I look at documenting the FMCG supply chain, and this was done on just one product. So example of it was, for example, 10 trillion of domestic FMCG production. The number is much higher. I'll give it to you at the end so that you have an impact realization on what happens. But for example, the FMCG manufacturers supply their entire production to large-scale distributors, who go to further sub-distributors, local distributors, and then to the retailers. And this whole thing, as you can see, the arrows talk about what flow and how much percentages, how much money is involved, right? So when we do something like this, we end up with approximately almost a 50-50 split between commercial consumers, which are hospitality, offices, any other commercial customers, and retail consumers. So it's almost a 50-50 split. But what is interesting is that the actual domestic production is not 10 trillion. It's more like 25 trillion. And the reported numbers that tax is paid on is closer to 5 trillion out of the 25. So it's 80% hole that we are in that could be addressed if this is done properly. So as soon as you start to push this segment and then therefore this segment onto a registration, this whole loophole starts to dissolve away. And that is what the current payment flows talk about. So the current payment flows show that there is electronic bill presentment and payments that are starting to get adopted in this flow. There's a company by the name of Hubble that does digital invoicing. They have all the large Nestle's and Unilevers and PepsiCo and Coca-Cola and all those. They already have them as their customers. So this part is getting digitized. The main problem is right here where there is cash. Cards are starting to increase in numbers, but the flying checks that is where your bigger problem is. So what happens is that the low risk transactions are just where everything is documented. The medium risk is whether there are the larger wholesalers, because they don't have much choice. They'll get audited definitely, and therefore they get caught. So they play it simple. And the high risk is where all of your cash is floating around. And I've gone out to retailers and talked to them, and they talk about the fact that, especially down here, they won't even go and deposit their money every day, right? They'll just keep it within them. बोरियों में रखेंगे, कहीं रखेंगे, तखाने में दबा देंगे, कुछ ना कुछ कर देंगे, but they won't go and deposit the money. So what happens is when their suppliers come the next time, they just hand them a bori. लाख रुपए की बोरी होगी जी, supply आ गई, पैसे हो गए. This travels up the food chain and gets hit to the actual manufacturers. And some of the smaller manufacturers are paying their salaries using that cash that they're getting, and therefore the cash even to their employers is not getting reported. So you can imagine, I mean, it's just massive. Now, what we had proposed was that we expand the electronic bill presentment and payment systems further to sub-distributors. As soon as you do that and you make it mandatory for sub-distributors to get registered, this segment disappears. This has to merge with that. And of course, you take away the post-dated checks or the purchase system. And all the retailers that we talked about in the wholesale markets talked about the fact that मैं तो सिर्फ पर्ची पे काम चलाता हूँ. बोल्टन मार्केट में एक खड्डे से में छोटी सी दुकान होगी जो कि दिन में कुछ about 3 से 4 घंटे के लिए ऑपरेट करेगी, लेकिन करोड़ों रुपए का बिजनेस कर लेगी और सारा पर्ची पे होगा. एक धेला उसके पास कैश में नहीं आएगा. So this is where we have a problem. ये हमने पुश करवाया था कि any B2B transaction, business to business transaction above the value of 250,000 had to be electronic. और इस पे बहुत पुश बैक आया हमें बैंक्स की तरफ से, surprisingly, कि जी हमारे पास जो है वो कॉर्पोरेट सिस्टम नहीं है, हमारे कमर्शियल कस्टमर्स के लिए हमारे पास कॉर्पोरेट बैंकिंग सिस्टम नहीं है. हमने कहा जी क्यों नहीं है आपके पास? आप जो T24s और ये सारे आपने डिप्लॉय किए हुए सारों में कमर्शियल बैंकिंग के लिए सॉल्यूशंस हैं. It's just a matter of that they don't want to really do it because their customers don't want to do it. And when the customers don't want to do it, as soon as you start to deploy commercial banking systems, the customers will just move to the next bank that doesn't have one to offer. So that is again that we need to, this is what we had pushed through State Bank of Pakistan as well, that it has to be made mandatory. So there was a push towards it. I don't know what the latest status of it is, but that is something that needs to be done. So as you start to restrict cash to just these transactions, you start to see results happening. So your low risk transactions become quite large, and medium to risk, the high risk are just very, very limited. And this is very, very important. I think we really need to work on this. And I'll just very quickly touch upon the GovStack piece, because I think that is also important for you just to understand what all is happening in the rest of the world. So one of the building blocks of that is digital identity. Luckily, we already have Nadra. We already have Nadra, which has an EMV chip on your ID card, which has the capability to store all of the required information for you to transact electronically with your entire government. Capabilities there, it has not been used. So one of the examples and one of the speakers at the GovStack discussion was ex-CIO for the country of Estonia. And I don't know if you have studied the Estonia model. Estonia has 99% e-government. The only 1% exception is for older people or people who cannot handle technology due to some impairment. Everything else happens electronically. Whether you want to pay your taxes, whether you want to vote, whether you want to apply for a driver's license, renew your vehicle registration, etc., etc. Everything is electronic. And because it is such a robust system, now the private sector has adopted all of those digital identity systems as well. So when you go to your bank, you use just your ID card. That is your identifier. Nothing else. No account numbers that you need to remember, nothing. No big code, nada. So taxpayer touch points was Kenya digital tax payments. Kenya was one example. I don't know if you know the history of this. Had really bad infrastructure to begin with, and they really suffered from the fact that they didn't have broadband to the homes and nobody could do anything. So they kicked off and did a leapfrog to mobile payments and mobile wallets many years ago, about 20 years ago. And they have been phenomenal at the success that they've achieved. So what they did was they just progressed it further and did all the taxes just from your mobile. And you don't even need a smartphone for that. It's a feature phone capable system. It's built into your SIM and everything is done from your feature phone. Data management standards, we talked about data ownership, custodians, who gets access to what and what all is stored. Tax rule management. So Spain has a fantastic tax assistant avatar. I remember about 6-7 months ago, I was doing a transfer of residence. I used to live in the UK. I was getting selling my house over there, transferring all the contents. And I could not for the life of me, although I had worked in FBR, I contacted a lot of my ex-FBR colleagues, could not understand what were the actual rules for transfer of residence. I spent about 6 months just doing research on that. And finally I said, Ya Allah, it's all from halal kamai, just jump in. And alhamdulillah, everything came through without much of a hassle. But it's so sad that that happens. Spain has a avatar, so it's all AI and machine learning driven. You ask the avatar a certain question, and 97%, I think, answers come from the FAQs that it already has learned over time. So the people have asked questions, they've been answered. The remainder actually go to a human being who answers the question through the same chat session. So that's a fantastic way to do it. The new skill sets. Now, somebody talked about weeks, I think, down to, when people get moved around. I had the opportunity to present to the PM the FBR strategic plan for tax reform, and I was warned by my chairman and the SAPM at that time that, look, he is very intolerant. He will not listen to anything that goes beyond a 2-week timeline. I was like, strategic systems don't get deployed in 2 weeks. It is impossible, right? So only tactical changes happen in 2 weeks. And that too, when you try to do it that way, you have minimal success. And so when I showed them, I said my Microsoft project file, I opened it up. It had all the deliverables and the tasks and the subtasks that were down to half a day, 1 day deliveries, everything. And they were like, you're crazy if you want to go up there with that. I said, let me be the crazy one. Let me go and present. If he wants to fire me, he can fire me on the spot. And my laptop had special permission to get into the PM house, got it presented, and I was also told, don't stand up and present. He hates it. I was like, no, I'm going to stand up and present. Because I need to actually deliver the message. And I did, and he appreciated that, and he told me to sit down. And I understand that you've done the planning all the way down to the task level. And what I want to see is transparency. I want to see when things are getting delivered. Are they getting delivered? Because he said, Mansoor, if you can do this for me, this will be one of the greatest things that you've ever done for your country. Because I said, I have a monthly progress report that I use for my projects that has a list of all the deliverables that were supposed to have been delivered that month, which ones got delivered, which ones slipped, why did they slip, what do I need to do to actually bring them back to green status. And he said, if you can give me this report on a monthly basis, it'll be fantastic. Because he said, we have a 3-month project. On the 4th month, I get reported as the deadline is slipped by 6 months. So that's typically how public sector projects go. Finland had a upskilling of technology skill set system that got deployed over an 8-year timeline. Now that मैं दाद देता हूँ उनकी हिम्मत की और उनकी सब्र की कि 8 साल उन्होंने इंतजार किया, लेकिन उसमें they had increment. Russia has a fantastic tax monitoring capability. So again, a lot of copy paste that can be done, and we can move forward on this. For Pakistan itself, 4 major building blocks that without which we cannot move forward. Nadra we already have. State Bank of Pakistan we already have. The Security and Exchange Commission has digitized data of everything. And the federal and the provincial revenue boards have that as well. Now, it's all a matter of talking to each other. And if you can talk to each other, believe me, tons of stuff happen. When I go and talk to Nadra, they say, oh, every time you verify something, I'm going to charge you 150 rupees. Come on, guys. This is within the government, right? We're talking about the government of Pakistan, and we're talking about benefiting the citizens of Pakistan. Within the public sector, I feel there should be zero charge. Whatever you want to do with private sector, I don't care. Do it. And we at that GovStack discussion, there were the Nadra's representative said, "Well, it costs us a lot of money to actually procure the data." I said, "And the government is paying you that money. It's not you're not producing that money and spending the money out of your own pocket." So anyway, so that's this was just a slide to make you understand that when there are a few things happening on top that are visible to the citizens and the taxpayers, there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the background. Last piece is potential to accelerate economic growth by 20 to 33%. This is documented. Dr. Anita Zaidi, who is the president of Gender Equality Division, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, she quoted this at the presentation. And potential to reduce annual expenses. Somebody was talking about, our budget, the way it's designed. I was actually also witness to this, that the expenses come first and the revenue sources come later, and then the gap FBR or the provincial revenue authorities are said, here's your new target. That's how you fulfill it. So up to a 40% savings on your annual costs. And that's it. Thank you very much.
With actual digitalization work that's going on. So I think this is also a good time to bring in FPR and Ms. Aisha Farooq. So Ms. Aisha Farooq, you have the floor. Before you start talking and sharing your experience of FPR's decision, I'm just going to give a brief bio that I received. Ms. Aisha Farooq is currently serving as the Director General of International Taxes at the Federal Board of Revenue and was previously the Chief Technology Officer at FPR. She has done a master's in Public Policy Management from the Georgetown University. My question to you would be, FPR, and I've been part of FPR in my previous life, has always been at the forefront of digitalization. I remember when we joined FPR way back in 2000, we were told that FPR actually started automating in the late 1970s actually. So how has that experience gone for FPR? What things have worked and what haven't worked? I think that would be extremely helpful for all the provincial tax authorities who are right now here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. To begin with, let's start from the very fact that digitalization cannot be done in silos. So FBR is just one of the organizations and entity that has to basically integrate and is representing the entire country and the functions in different ministries and governments. What to say that we are the collectors and that they have to deal with another counterpart, which is the taxpayers. Our process of reform and change started in 2000. And ever since then, after every 5 years, we go through another change management setup. And whatever we try to move on with, somehow it gets tweaked. We've come a long way, and yet we have a long way to go ahead. And that's where I differ with Umar Saab when I say that capacity building is, however, a need for FBR with the new systems that keep on coming out towards our way. FBR has initiated POS, FBR has initiated track and trace, FBR has moved on with the Pakistan single window, and the results are there that we got 40% increase in comparison to the earlier collection of revenues. Having said that, now we are dealing with an international setup which requires the digitalization, and it is no more focused only at the center. It has to have collaboration of data integration with provinces. So it is no more a need that can be pushed under the desk anymore. It is something where the international taxation system is moving. We have automated exchange of information coming from properties, coming from different agencies, different jurisdictions. Now that data is spread within the state in different provinces. Once that data is in different provinces, we don't have access. So a data center and a GovStack like Sultan Saab just pointed out, is very much in need, and efforts are underway. So we are in collaboration with NADRA. We recently agreed with provinces to launch an integrated sales tax return, which will be initiated soon, starting from the telco sector. And we intend to move it into the other sectors also, where the provinces would be able to read whatever is their collection and expenditures, and the center will not be extracting from them, which sometimes is one of the accusations that FBR faces. Another thing that has happened is that agricultural tax is also going to be automated, and digitalization and efforts are underway, and there's dialogue going on in FBR on that segment. Because you see, all those segments are going to be affected with the new international tax systems, where the law of the country will go into the background. So there's a right now ongoing debate at OECD for introduction of subject to tax rule, or pillar 1 or pillar 2. And then at another fora of the United Nations, there is a rule of 12b. So the segments of excise, properties, and certain segments of revenue will have to be taken into the digitalization bracket. So FPR is aware of that very fact and is started to work on it. And that means that we have to have a lot of consultation with provinces. Now, the provinces are at different level of development and a different level of transformation of digitalization. How do we harmonize that? How do we integrate that? These are the areas where workshops like this are pivotal for us, because we get feedback. And provinces also need to be aware that it is no more a political dialogue between the state. It is gone to the fact that it is a need now. I hope I've answered your question so far.
Yes, thank you so much. I mean, that's a very interesting discussion, because when you think about integrating with the provincial databases, that brings up a whole new set of challenges, especially after the 18th Amendment. So I think I will leave you with that thought. But Mr. Abdul Hamid Memon Saab, I think I'm going to direct the next question to you. Abdul Hamid Memon Saab is a senior member at the Sindh Revenue Board and has served in the Federal Board of Revenue as Director General and Chief Inland Revenue. Originally an officer of Pakistan Customs, he opted to join IRS in 2010 and has held key positions in the field as well as at FPR headquarters, and has substantive experience of policy making, being part of several budget making exercises, and has also been involved with various IT related projects related to sales tax. Memon Saab, my question to you would be about the efforts of the SRB, especially after you have taken over on digitalization. I was going to the website and I found out that the entire return process is online. So taxpayers in Sindh are now able to file their returns, get registered, enrolled, all of that is happening online. And recently you have also implemented the e-payment system, which is also something that Mr. Sultan Saab has also recommended in this presentation. So are there any insights that you would like to share with the rest of us?
Before answering your questions, I have some comment to make regarding the discussions earlier on this forum. There is a general buzzword that provinces should be more reliant; they should not depend so much on NFC transfers. For that to be implemented, we have to have those much resources with the provinces. Shirani Saab just mentioned that provinces have a potential of collecting 2 to 3% of taxes of GDP. FBR currently collects 10% of GDP, around 10%, but its potential as per finance minister is 18%. But if we keep that to 15%, then 15% can be collected by FBR, 3% by the provinces. So with that kind of mix, how can we expect the provinces to be more reliant on their own revenues? On top of that, we are talking of reversing the 18th Amendment with respect to sales tax on services. We talk of integrating sales tax, but integration of sales tax can take place in two ways. First, only one authority can collect whole of that sales tax on services and on goods. But when you do that, you will be depriving the provinces of that very important resource. But the other way it can be done is you go for the co-sharing of sales tax base, like India has done, like Canada has done. That will enable the provinces to generate more revenues. So in that way, you can make them less reliant on NFC transfers. Having said that, on coming to the subject of digitization and digitalization, revenue authorities, sales tax authorities in particular, have been somewhat fortunate in that aspect. When I joined FBR, started my job in FBR in 1995, there were computers all around, but that was a somewhat rude form of digitization because the returns were being filed manually, the GDs were filed being manually, and but later on they were being digitized. First time the digitalization of processes that Mansoor Saab was talking of started in 2002 in the form of digitalization of sales tax refunds through STAR program, sales tax automated refund repository, which started actually processing the refunds. And that analysis sheet was generated on which officer used to work, and then they went for sanction of refunds. In 2010, I'm generally talking of the sales tax side, customs did better. They did started PAX, and then they did VBOC in maybe 2010 or 11. On sales tax side, in 2010, we started ERS, Expeditious Refund System. And from there, we start the system, the computer system started generating sales tax refund payment orders. So that was a major step. Uh, Before that, in 2007, we shifted from manual returns to universally e-filed returns. FBR did that. So that was a major step. When provincial authorities started working in 2011, SRB was founded and created and started. So generally all the authorities followed FBR model. They took the assistance from PRAL, and they adopted the same model of e-filing of returns. So that has been very helpful, and that has helped provincial authorities to generate revenues on self-assessment models. So compared to other provincial departments, these sales tax revenue authorities are more digitized and digitalized. Talking of SRB, not only those sales tax returns are being filed, we have also automated our internal processes like audits and interaction with taxpayers in the form of correspondence, and we also do the assessments automatically. Although we are not interacting with the taxpayers for assessment purpose on through electronic channel, we still send paper notices, but internal processes are somewhat digitized. So probably at a provincial revenue authorities, we need to follow IRIS model, which is being followed by FBR. We used to have more electronic interaction with the taxpayers for notices and assessments and otherwise. So going beyond that, integrating not only taxpayers like we were talking of data exchanges with other authorities, so that is also very important, and that also needs to be done, like with NADRA, and even with FBR we are not properly integrated. FBR did go for was able to make some MOUs with provincial departments like Board of Revenue, Excise and Taxation Department to get their data, but there is no reciprocity. FBR should also be sharing its data with the provincial authorities. Like for agriculture income tax, it can share the data with Board of Revenues, because there is declaration of agriculture income in income tax returns. They just declare the agriculture income and don't have to pay any tax with the FBR. But if those declarations are made available to provinces, they would be able to generate sufficient revenue from those declarations, because that revenue might not have gone to the provinces. And for us, for SRB as a sales tax authority, we also need FBR data to make new registrations, and also to find the gaps in declaration. They are declaring something else with FBR and they might not be declaring that with provincial authorities. So those gaps can also be fulfilled if you have that kind of integration data exchange with other authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit Saab. I think one key theme that is emerging from the two discussants' input is that it just can't happen in silos. You have to work in collaboration with everyone who's involved in that ecosystem. And I think the point that you are making here is extremely important, that if FBR is asking data from the provincial authorities, then they should also be exchanging data in return. And I hope that capacity is built over time. I will now, the forum is, by the way, open. So if anyone wants to, make a contribution, please don't wait for me to, ask for that. But just going through the list of formal discussions, I would now move towards Ahmed Saeed Saab. Ahmed Saeed Saab, you have worked a lot. I was going through your profile as well yesterday, and I found out that you have properties की digitization पे काफी काम किया है पंजाब में, and you have also been involved on the policy making side of it. So generally, मेरा experience जो बहुत limited है, by the way, is कि digitalization is not a substitute of the policy. If the policy is bad, no amount of IT could help, improve the overall system. आपका इस पे क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा है, क्या आपका इंसाइट रहा है? पंजाब में जब बहुत अच्छा काम हुआ प्रॉपर्टीज़ का रिकॉर्ड डिजिटाइज करने पे, तो क्या ओवरऑल एफिशिएंसी, ट्रांसपेरेंसी, पॉलिसी मेकिंग पे उसका कोई इम्पैक्ट आया?
एक एनवायरनमेंट होता था, फिर अर्बन यूनियन ने हमें डिजिटाइज करके दिया डाटा 10 साल पहले, तो एनवायरनमेंट एक चेंज हुआ है, डिस्कशन भी उसको मिनिमाइज़ हुई है. जैसे डिस्कस हो रहा था कि इंस्पेक्टर्स के पास डिस्कशन होती थी, तो एटलीस्ट ये नहीं है. अब हमारे पास एक पेट सेट ऑफ कैटेगरीज़ है, उसके अंदर अगर इंस्पेक्टर ने और डेफिनेटली उसके अंदर ही किया हुआ है कि ए कैटेगरी में असेस की प्रॉपर्टी, तो उसके बाद अब ये डिस्कशन नहीं कि उसको बी में ले आए या बी वाले को एक ए में लेकर आए, या जो असेसमेंट उसने फीड कर ली कंप्यूटर के अंदर डिजिटाइज एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर, तो उसको उसके साथ उसकी मैनिपुलेशन उस तरह नहीं हो सकती जैसे मैनुअल में होती थी. और इस तरह बड़ी हमने डिपार्टमेंट इंक्वायरीज भी की कि सफ़े के सफ़े चेंज होते थे रजिस्टर के. तो इम्प्रूवमेंट तो डिजिटाइजेशन के साथ बहुत ज़्यादा ही आई है. अलबत्ता पॉलिसी लेवल पे इश्यूज़ तो हमें बहुत हैं, जैसे मैं डॉक्टर प्राचा साहब की प्रेजेंटेशन के बाद भी कह रहा था कि हम कोई पिछले 5 साल से ये एफर्ट कर रहे हैं कि हमारे जो वैल्यूएशन टेबल्स हैं 2013-14 के, उनको जो 13-14 में भी अंडर असेस थे, सप्रेस थे, उनको हम चेंज करना चाहते हैं. हम हर साल हर 5 साल बाद चेंज करना चाहिए था, तो ये हम कोई 18-19 से एफर्ट कर रहे हैं और 24 आ गए, तो हर दफ़ा टर्न डाउन कर दी जाती है. सारे फॉर्म से हम आगे निकल जाते हैं, लेकिन जब कैबिनेट में जाता है इशू, तो वो कहती है कि ये कोई अभी कोई फिजिबल नहीं है, ये लास्ट ईयर है हमारा, ये फर्स्ट ईयर है, ये हमारा सेकंड ईयर है. तो इसलिए उसमें हमें बहुत ज़्यादा इश्यूज़ हैं. तो जो एक्साइज डिपार्टमेंट पंजाब के साथ इशू इस वक्त सबसे ज़्यादा वो पॉलिटिकल इकॉनमी को मैनेज करना है, वो हम अनफॉर्चुनेटली नहीं कर पा रहे. तो इस तरह के फोरम हमने और भी हेल्प ली हुई है, लम्स के प्रोफेसर साहब से है, डॉक्टर चीमा साहब से हमने हेल्प ली हुई है, RMC के अंदर भी इस तरह के एकेडमिक्स अवेलेबल हैं. अनफॉर्चुनेटली हम उस लेवल पे अभी गवर्नमेंट को कन्विंस नहीं कर पा रहे. एक डेटाबेस हमारे पास है 4.5 मिलियन प्रॉपर्टीज़ का है, और व्हीकल्स का हमारे पास कोई 24 मिलियन प्रॉपर्टीज़ का, जो हमने शेयर भी किया हुआ है FBR के साथ. तो डेटाबेस मौजूद है इमूवेबल और मूवेबल दोनों प्रॉपर्टीज़ की, उसको हम बेनिफिट नहीं कर पा रहे किसी भी लेवल पे, प्रोविंस लेवल पे भी नहीं और फेडरल लेवल पे भी उस तरह नहीं कर पा रहे. तो मेरा इससे पहले मैं ख़त्म करूँ, मेरे 2 क्वेश्चन होंगे. एक डॉक्टर मेमन साहब से है कि जो रिटर्न्स आ गई हैं, सबमिट होती हैं, उसमें सैलरीड पर्सन की कितनी % है? नहीं जी, आपसे मैं आपका नाम मेमन साहब से, तो उसमें सैलरीड पर्सन के परसेंटेज क्या है सर रिटर्न्स की, और नॉन सैलरीड पर्सन की कितनी है? ओके, FBR से क्वेश्चन.
I'm sorry, I do not have the exact numbers in my fingertips regarding the exact number of sales tax and whatever you've asked for, but I can.
इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न्स की बात करें.
इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न्स का इंडिविजुअल्स का ओवरऑल थ्रेशोल्ड जो है वो इस वक्त हमारा कंबाइंड जो है रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, आई एम सॉरी, आई डू नॉट हैव दैट विद मी. but I can get that for you. And because I do not want to just flaunt a number which is not backed with the exact figures.
On, sorry, sir. The second question is, if you allow me, database FPR کے ساتھ شیئرڈ ہمارا ایک سائنس ڈپارٹمنٹ کا, اور اس بینیفٹ بھی آپ لے رہے ہیں. جو انڈاکومنٹڈ اکانومی جس کا منصور سلطان صاحب نے ذکر کیا ہے, جو 3-4 گھنٹوں میں کروڑوں روپے کی ٹرانزیکشن کرتے ہیں, اس کو FPR کیسے کیچ کر سکتا ہے؟ کنٹریری ٹو دیٹ, پروونسز کے اندر یہ فیلنگ ہے کہ جو ہماری امپورٹنٹ پراپرٹیز ہیں, ایک تو وہیکل ہے, وہیکل میں سپوز 60,000 ہم ریکور کرتے ہیں وہیکل سے, تو اس میں 50,000 FBR کا ہوتا ہے ود ہولڈنگ ٹیکس. دوسرا 7E آپ نے ایڈ کر دیا جو کہ پراپرٹیز کے اوپر ہے, ڈیمڈ انکم کے اوپر ہے. تو ہمارے اندر یہ فیلنگ آ رہی ہے پروونسز کے اندر کہ جو فیڈریشن ہے وہ انکروچ کر رہی ہے ہمارے رائٹس کو.
دیکھیں, اس میں جو آپ بات کر رہے ہیں 7E کی, یا اگر آپ کہتے ہیں کہ انفارمل سیکٹر کو ہم کیسے ڈاکیومنٹ کریں گے, انفارمل سیکٹر کے لیے بائی ڈیزائن آپ کی اکانومی اس طرح سے بنی ہوئی ہے جس میں اگر آپ ان ون گو, when we say that, you know, sometimes textbooks suggest some things which are very ideal in nature. It has to be taken in account and with the exact picture of what your dynamics are when you are dealing with a society which is perhaps not so savvy with IT, what to say about literacy, and then uske baad unka intent of doing business and the way the system has been there. So you can't stall the system in one go by moving into that. Informal کے لیے small steps are being taken. جس طرح سے ہم نے اس کے اوپر اب جیسے فرسٹ 2 اسٹیپس کے اوپر ابھی سلطان صاحب نے بھی دکھایا کہ ہم نے کریڈٹ کارڈ کا لانچ کیا, 5% کا اس کا کیا, اور وہ کروانا شروع کر دیا. پروونسز کی ایک ڈائنامک جو ایک چیز جو کہ somehow I feel that clarity is not there in the provinces, کہ آپ کا سبجیکٹ از نو مور گیٹنگ افیکٹڈ انلیس اگر آپ کو آپ کا ڈیو رائٹ مل جاتا ہے جس میں ہم IT بیسڈ سسٹم کے اندر ریفلیکٹ کر دیتے ہیں. سو دیٹ سیٹلز اٹ. وٹ ایور وڈ بی ود دا پروونس اٹ وڈ بی شیئرڈ. ناؤ ایفرٹس آر انڈر وے آن دس اینڈ وی آر ڈیزائننگ دیٹ سسٹم جس کے اندر آپ لوگوں کا ریفلیکٹڈ ایریاز جس ڈفرینٹ ایک سبجیکٹ تو ہے نہیں, دیر سو مینی مطلب ڈائنامکس جس کے اندر ہم آپ سے ایکسائز کے لیے لیتے ہیں, ہم آپ سے پراپرٹی کا لیتے ہیں, ہم آپ سے services کے اوپر there's been a long debate on the restaurants. So all those areas, that segment is now going to get automated. And there is a business processes re-engineering team and there's a domain team working extensively onto this with under collaboration with NADRA. So there is going to be a data bank and we intend to make it attend to the concerns of the provinces now.
Thank you.
ڈاکیومنٹیشن کے حوالے سے اب جیسے میڈم نے بھی, منصور صاحب نے بھی POS کی بات کی, تو POS کا سسٹم بڑا اچھا ہے. یہ ریٹیل لیول کی ٹرانزیکشنس کو کیپچر کرنے کے لیے بڑا اچھا ہے, کیونکہ ریٹیل سیکٹر کی ٹرانزیکشنس اوپن ارینا میں ہوتی ہے. کوئی بھی جا کے, پبلک پریشر بھی ہو سکتا ہے, ڈپارٹمنٹ خود جا کے مسٹری شاپنگ وغیرہ کر سکتا ہے, تو ان کو وہاں پہ کیچ کیا جا سکتا ہے. رائٹ ناؤ FPR نے ریٹیلرس کے لیے کیا ہوا ہے, پرومسز نے جنرلی ریسٹورینٹس کے لیے کیا ہوا ہے, اور دوسرے ریٹیل سیکٹرز کو بھی اس میں لانے کی ضرورت ہے. اور اس کے بعد پھر جو مینوفیکچررس کے لیے یہ جو ٹریک اینڈ ٹریس سسٹم ہے, یہ بھی بڑا اچھا اس لیے ہے کہ جنرلی چیزیں تو وہی مارکیٹ میں آ رہی ہوتی ہیں, جو پروڈکٹس ہیں جن پہ وہ اسٹیمپنگ ہوئی ہے, اور وہاں سے ان کو پکڑا جا سکتا ہے کہ جن پہ ٹیکس پے ہوا کہ نہیں ہوا. اس کے بعد FPR کا ہی انیشیٹو جو انوائسنگ کا ہے, وچ از مینٹ فار کورنگ B2B ٹرانزیکشنز, تو وہ کیونکہ B2B لیول پہ وہ اوپن میں نہیں ہوتی ہیں, وہاں پہ کولیجن کولیبریشن کی پاسبلٹیز ہوتی ہیں, تو وہاں پہ شاید وہ انوائسنگ اتنا کامیاب نہ ہو. لیکن اب جب ہم ریٹیل سیکٹر کو کیپچر کرتے ہیں فلی, اب دیکھیں نا کئی ملکوں میں تو سیلس ٹیکس ہے ہی ریٹیل اسٹیج پہ, کیونکہ اس لیے ہے کہ ہر چیز وہاں پہ آنی ہے, وہاں پہ آ کے ٹیکس ہونی ہے. وہاں پہ ٹیکس ہو گئی تو پیچھے کا ٹیکس بھی آ گیا. تو جب ریٹیل کو ڈاکومنٹ کریں گے, کیپچر کریں گے, تو پچھلے لیول کے ٹرانزیکشنز بھی, سیلس ٹیکس تو آ جائے گا, جو انکم ٹیکس کے لیے وہ بھی کیپچر ہونا شروع ہو جائیں گے. اچھا, دوسری بات آپ نے کی انکروچمنٹ بائی FBR کی, اس پہ ہمارے بھی سیلس ٹیکس بینگ مطلب اب تو SRB میں ہیں, پہلے FBR میں تھے, تو جو ود ہولڈنگ کے بہت سارے فارمز ہیں انکم ٹیکس کے، وہ ہم سمجھتے ہیں کہ سیلس ٹیکس آن سروسز پہ ایک طرح سے انکروچمنٹ ہے. فار ایگزامپل موبائل کی مثال لے لیں، وہاں پہ اینڈ کنزیومر سے آپ ود ہولڈنگ انکم ٹیکس لے لیتے ہیں، ایڈوانس انکم ٹیکس لے لیتے ہیں. اب بیسکلی وہ تو بہت سارے بیچارے ٹیکسیبل بھی نہیں ہوتے، مطلب ہر کیٹیگری کے لوگ اس میں ہوتے ہیں، لیکن اس سے یہ ہوتا ہے اس ایڈوانس انکم ٹیکس کی وجہ سے کہ لوگوں کی پرچیز کیپیسٹی افیکٹ ہوتی ہے ایڈورسلی، اور اس سے انڈائریکٹلی ہمارے ریونیوز جو سیلس ٹیکس آن سروسز ہے وہ آتا ہے. 7E کی آپ نے بات کی، 2 ہائی کورٹس نے تو ان کو کہا ٹھیک ہے، پنجاب اور سندھ لاہور اور سندھ نے، پشاور ہائی کورٹ کا بھی ججمنٹ آیا، اس نے اس کو کہا ہے کہ یہ بیسیکلی انکم ٹیکس نہیں ہے، یہ ہے کیپٹل ویلیو ٹیکس، جو کہ سیریل نمبر 50 ہے میرے خیال میں کانسٹیٹیوشن کا. انہوں نے کہا کہ یہ سینٹر نہیں لگا سکتا ہے، تو انہوں نے اس کو الٹرا وائرس کیا ہے. تو یہ پوزیشن ہے اس میں.
تھوڑی سی میں ایک دو باتیں صرف مختصر ایڈ کرنا چاہوں گا. سندھ ہائی کورٹ نے ایک ڈیسیشن دیا ہے جس میں کینٹونمنٹ بورڈ اور ڈی ایچ اے کے لیے پراپرٹی ٹیکس کو انہوں نے وائڈ قرار دے دیا ہے کہ 18th امینڈمنٹ کے بعد اٹ از اے پروونشل سبجیکٹ. آبویسلی اٹ از ٹو گو ٹو دا سپریم کورٹ، اور الٹیمیٹلی جو بھی سپریم کورٹ کا فائنل ڈیسیشن ہوگا دیٹ ول بی اپلیکیبل اکراس پاکستان. ایک تو یہ ججمنٹ کا میں حوالہ دینا چاہ رہا تھا، ابھی تک اس کا ذکر نہیں ہوا. دوسرا، سپریم کورٹ نے 15 days بیک ڈسٹریبیوشن سروسز کو سروسز قرار دے کر ریٹیل چین میں، سپلائی چین میں ایف بی آر کے ڈومین سے نکال کر پروونسز کو دے دی ہے. تو یہ سمجھتے ہیں، حالانکہ اس میں ہم لوگوں کا پرو ایکٹیو رول شاید نہیں تھا، لیکن وہ سارے اسٹیجز پر کیس چل کر الٹیمیٹلی انٹرپریٹیشن آف لا جو ہوتی ہے وہ سپریم کورٹ ہی کرتی ہے. ناؤ اٹ کین گو اگینسٹ دا پروونس، اٹ کین گو اگینسٹ دا ایف بی آر اور وائس ورسا. تو یہ جب ہم لوگ آپس میں چیزوں کو سیٹل ڈاؤن نہیں کرتے ہیں تو فائنلی دا آربیٹریشن ول گو ٹو دا جوڈیشل فورمس اینڈ دے ول دین ڈیسائڈ فائنلی دا فیٹ آف دا انٹرپریٹیشن آف دا کانسٹیٹیوشن اور دا نیچر آف سروس اور نیچر آف گوڈس. تو یہ صورتحال اس وقت ڈیولپ ہو رہی ہے، کیونکہ یہ سارے کا سارا جو سیلس ٹیکس آن سروسز ہے یا دوسرے ٹیکسز ہیں، یہ اس وقت جوڈیشل ریویو کے ماتحت ہیں. الٹیمیٹلی ان کی انٹرپریٹیشن جو ہے وہ ہائی کورٹس اور سپریم کورٹ نے ہی کرنی ہے. تو وہ پھر کیس لا بن جائے گا، تو دین اٹ ول بی امپلیمنٹڈ اکراس دا بورڈ.
سیگمنٹ کا آپ نے ایک سوال پوچھا تھا، جو اس میں ٹو بی آنیسٹ میں آپ کو ایک پرائیویٹ سیکٹر والا جواب دیتا ہوں. اٹ ریکوائرز اے لاٹ آف پولیٹیکل ول، اور یہ چیز میرے اس زمانے میں ہوا تھا کہ ہم نے انفارمل سیکٹر کو ٹیپ کرنے کی کوشش کی، اور 2 دفعہ تو ہڑتال ہو کے تو ہمارے دفتر کے سامنے پورا کانسٹیٹیوشن ایونیو کو بند کر دیا تھا. ٹھیک ہے، سو اور بات یہی آتی ہے کہ بھئی اگر تو کرنا ہے اور جان لگانی ہے تو جان لگانی پڑے گی. اٹس ناٹ گونا بی ایزی، رائٹ؟ ورنہ پھر وہ آئی ایم ایف بھی آج کل کے جو حالات ہیں ہمارے، اس میں آئی ایم ایف نے بھی اتنا سلام پھیر دیا، اور پھر آپ کرتے رہیں. سو دیٹ از ناٹ a feasible way to do it. So political will is a must, and we have to back up our regulatory authorities and our regulatory bodies politically کہ یار ٹھیک ہے، کرنا ہے، ہم آپ کے پیچھے ہیں، آپ کریں. ہڑتال ہوتی ہے، کتنے دن ہڑتال کر لیں گے؟ ٹھیک ہے نا، انہوں نے بھی زندہ رہنا ہے، تو وہ ہفتہ ہڑتال کر لیں گے، اس کے بعد they'll have to come back to the shops and start doing trade again. So that is, I think, something that is very, very important that we need to keep that in mind. اور میرے خیال سے آپ کچھ کہنا چاہ رہے ہیں.
جی، میں اسی پہ بات کرنا چاہ رہی تھی. آئی تھنک دیر از اے پازیٹیو سائڈ ٹو دیٹ ایز ویل. وی شوڈ نوٹ کووڈ واز اے بلیسنگ ان ڈسگائز ان اے وے بیکاز اٹ ہیلپڈ ڈیجیٹائزیشن آف دا اکانومی. پیپل اسٹارٹیڈ یوزنگ phones, transfers through Telenor systems, transfers through Jazz Cash systems. Even the vendors, the small shopkeepers, I've been transferring personally, and since then I've started using that, and they are very happy having these amounts received out of that. So there is a lot of data there which is being generated very quietly, and it is being unnoticed. So some digitization is happening. Maybe we should tap on that. That data must be used. And I mean, it is a very small, those vendors are not big ones. Maybe those are small ones. But the data is there. So it's setting a trend that should be tapped. The data would speak. Thank you.
After 30 seconds, if you don't mind. Sorry, my apologies. 30 seconds.
Mansoor Saab,
I just spoke with the CEO of a company called Dukan yesterday. दुकान का बहुत ही फैंटास्टिक मॉडल है और ये इनफॉर्मल एरिया में बहुत अच्छा काम कर सकता है, नॉट B2B बट B2C. उसमें उन्होंने क्या किया है कि उन्होंने एक छोटा सा एक टर्मिनल दे दिया है जिसके ऊपर QR कोड है, पेमेंट QR कोड है, और उसके अंदर एक स्पीकर भी है. जब आप जाते हैं किसी भी परचून की दुकान पे या कॉर्नर शॉप पे, आप पेमेंट करने के लिए वो रास्त के रेल्स इस्तेमाल करता है. आप वो QR कोड को स्कैन करें, आप ट्रांसफ़र करें जो भी पैसे आपने देने, इमीडिएटली जब वो पैसे उसके अकाउंट में पहुंचते हैं, वो बॉक्स में जो स्पीकर लगा हुआ है वो आपको बोलता है कि जी 1250 रुपये पहुंच गए हैं. और वो रिटेलर जो है वो अपने ऐप पे भी चेक कर सकता है 1250 रुपये पहुंच गए. सो दैट्स ओनली द पेमेंट साइड ऑफ इट. द रेस्ट ऑफ द 10 seconds आई हैव लेफ्ट इज टॉकिंग अबाउट द इन्वेंट्री मैनेजमेंट. उसी ऐप के अंदर इन्वेंट्री मैनेजमेंट बिल्ट इन है. तो अगर सर्फ के 50 उसने बैग्स बेचे हैं और 60 आए थे, उसके बाद ऑटोमेटिकली उसके पास आ जाता है कि जी मेरे पास 10 बच गए हैं, और पीछे से जो सप्लायर है उसका, ही इज इंटीग्रेटेड इनटू दैट एज वेल. तो उसको पता है कि अगला जो है ना उसके 10 उसके रह गए हैं, उसने और बचाने. थैंक यू.
थैंक यू. सो ये कॉमन परसेप्शन जो है कि ये रिटेलर्स हैं, ये नहीं करने देते हैं डॉक्यूमेंटेशन. तो आई जस्ट गिव यू माय 2010 में 9 में 10 में जब मैं मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस में था, तो फाइनेंस बिल में हमने एक छोटी सी एक चीज़ ऐड की थी कि ये जो सप्लाई चेन है, इसमें अगर आपके अनरजिस्टर्ड सप्लायर्स हैं तो उनकी सिर्फ आपने हमें ID कार्ड की कॉपी देनी है. तो ये फाइनेंस बिल अनाउंस हुआ. अगले दिन PK 300 कराची से चलती है. जितने भी कराची के साइट के कैटी के बड़े जो बिजनेसमैन थे उस फ्लाइट पे somehow they had bumped off everybody else and they had come there. एंड इन्होंने धरना सिर्फ 4th फ्लोर पे नहीं दिया, उधर कमेटी रूम पे 4th फ्लोर पे उस वक्त IMF भी होता था. तो IMF के सामने भी धरना दिया इन्होंने. एंड इवन द IMF they made sure the IMF backed down as well. So I mean there are limitations, and until the political authorities have that will.
So I think one interesting thing is also that there's just so much data being collected in all the systems. One problem that we identify is that the data is in silos, it's not integrated. But the other thing is कि उस data का लोग कर क्या रहे हैं? For example, FPR. I have some insight into the way FPR works. A single window में we are collecting a lot of data. So what is going on with that data? उस data को कोई analyze कर रहा है? Is there any trend analysis? Umar साहब, over to you please.
ये जो बात की थी प्रेजेंटेशन में इन्होंने डेटा शेयरिंग की, देखें जी, बात असल में, सॉरी आई हैव टू स्विच टू इंग्लिश. The issue of data sharing is that there is a lot of lip service going on data sharing. Actually, data sharing is not happening. It is not happening, it is not happening, and I don't see a very bright future for data sharing. Because fundamentally, our political economy, the gulf between provinces and the federation is increasing, and within provinces the gulf between provincial government and local governments is also increasing. Data sharing is all an issue of trust. When you share data, you are not sitting in an exam in which you are to score 100 out of 100 as far as accuracy of data is concerned. I think Aisha also pointed out to this fact that sometimes we are reluctant to share data because we are ourselves not sure when you have large data sets that how reliable our own data set is. And we do not want to be sort of pointed out in a public forum like this that your data has an error rate of say 20%. I would not collapse and faint if my data has an error rate of even 30%, because that's a feedback which you should take positively, that you need to improve data. The problem is, and this is a very psychological and a human problem, we don't have data sharing forums. I will not talk about data sharing MOUs or data sharing legislation. I will talk about something real. A data sharing forum is where you liberally exchange data. You sort of red team the other people's data, in the sense that this is the problem with your data, this is the issue with your data, how collectively can we improve our data sets. Till we have that exercise done more often, it is not being done absolutely right now, but it has to be done with greater frequency. we ourselves will not become confident enough to share data. Number one, that is one issue. The second issue, it is even much more important, is when are we going to make this data public? I'm not talking about taxation data, but there are a lot of other data sets that we can make public. The private sector over here, and I'm talking about the data private sector over here, is thriving. And it is blooming. Young graduates are coming here, setting up startups. They have got great ideas. They just want that data. And the data is residing within the urban unit, away and brush it away, under the carpet every time a data review or a data sharing exercise comes. That's why we are not sharing data, because errors would be actually, pointed out. This is a very practical instance. And, I think that is simply exacerbating the problem. It is not leading to any solution. So if this was a forum in which urban unit was to show its UAPT data, obviously Mansoor Sultan Saab would have 101 things to say about it. I should have stomach enough and large-hearted enough that I should be able to take that criticism. Unfortunately, in government, people react to it. I think that is something which is the new phenomenon of data sharing. Now let's come up to the MOU parts of it. You can have MOUs. We in Punjab even have a data sharing protocol between 7 or 8 departments. And still, the law, even if you have a data sharing law, that is not an enabling framework. Till you have processes which enable that data sharing law. The law itself would not give you the processes, the forums, and all that. And now I'll be a bit more philosophical about the advent of IT in Pakistan in general. So when it happened in the USA, um, there was an MIT professor at that time, a very young MIT professor. She wrote a book, Man and the Machine. So Shoshana Zuboff is her name, and she talked about two things about what computers were doing to the American companies at that time. In some cases, they say that computers automate. And this is what we are looking at here in Pakistan. There's a lot of automation happening. Things are happening faster. Whenever you ask for data, it comes faster. But they are not informating. Informating is when you start using your data and that start changing the way you approach your problems. Your business processes start changing. You are looking at data in a much more acute way, rather than simply printing out a table and just putting that table. We do not want digitized registers. We want basically digitized analytical reports which point out that here is the rating area, which the spatial data shows that so much built up area has sort of increased in the last 5 years, and it's not falling in any rating area of any municipal government. For example, it might be news to someone over here that for the last 2 years, or perhaps last 3 years, the Board of Revenue is doing digital Girdabri. So the Girdavas which are going in the field in trying to assess what is the crop production of every khasra and khevat, that is being done digitally. Now, keeping aside the point that whether that is accurate or not, you now have digital numbers on how much a khasra is producing. So when it comes to agriculture income taxation, you can actually figure out that what is a field generating for a particular farmer. And at a district level, you can have agriculture income tax tables. But that connection is simply not happening, because the Board of Revenue is not joining up with an analytical body, either in the public sector or in the private sector, to do that thing for you. Now, let us not expect the Board of Revenue to become the analytical body overnight. And that finally comes to Aisha's point, that why I was against capacity. I'm all for capacity, but the issue is that repeated sort of attempt at capacity building have not been sustainable, and over a period of time a very cynical view has actually developed within the government about capacity building programs. That is not denying the fact that we need capacities at the local government level or at even the provincial level, But we have to now start being smart about capacity building programs, build more agile and contextualized capacity building programs which can give you the deliverables more quickly, because this is what the government, the proof of the pudding is in the is in the eating. So I think with that I would really conclude, because these are the low hanging fruits. It's all there, everything is there in digitized format, and it's increasing day by day. Every time the Punjab Information Technology Board comes up with a monitoring app, it is creating data. That data is lying in servers somewhere, and that is not being accessed for proper analysis. So I think that is internal data sharing, opening up to the private sector to do some of that work for you, and just having these forums or processes which allow or enable data sharing is perhaps the way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Excellent, Umar Saab. It's all music to my ears actually, because we face same kind of challenges in the work that we do. And I think, Dr. Sharafgan, I think this is a good time to bring you in as well, because do you think that, when we talk about behavioral insights into tax collection, we probably should also do something to rewire the way civil servants, tax administrators think of leveraging data to, bring these tax administration reforms? What would be your take on that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Aftab Sahab. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I'm really learning a lot. But let me add a couple of points to the discussion, I think. And we've been talking about data sharing. And I think one, Umar Sahab, you would agree that one data that is urban unit is housing is about property taxes. And linking it to the previous session, there is very clear case that if you make that data accessible to local government departments, like right now they have no idea within their jurisdiction how much tax is being collected, how, like if you want to really empower them and you want to think about how local governments can become self-sustaining, make their own budgets, or be part of this agreement between state and citizen, that how, so just linking this is a very low hanging fruit, as you've been calling it, just linking or enabling that data to the local government department so that they know who is paying taxes, who is not paying taxes, could really do wonders, right? So again, this is something which is already there, but again, because of some there may be political concerns about this, because there is well-defined NFC, but PFCs are not really functioning the way they are supposed to function in the provincial setting. So I think when you're thinking about data sharing, that you talked about agriculture income taxes and federal government sharing it with provincial governments, and again, I think similar logic applies with excise sharing it with further down to the local governments, and that would do great. I just want to add, I think it will be a miss because we've been talking about the role of technology. IGC has sponsored this work. I've been part of the team where we looked at these point of sale devices when they are given to businesses, firms, how their impact has been. And what we have uncovered, for example, in Punjab's case, Dr. Javed is not here anymore, but what we have looked at is that once a business, it's really at a micro level, looking at what really happens. So it does have a lot of potential in improving tax compliance, right? So you have a note in your packet among IGC. So we wrote a policy brief for that, that once a business gets a points of sale device, they tend to report their sales more accurately. However, I think this is the important point I want to make, that when we look at this similar intervention being done in KP, and we've looked at the impact of these devices in KP as well, we see that because there's a lot more informality in KP, and we see that there's initial uptick in sales and business start to report more accurately. But because there are these interventions that are given to some businesses and there's large informal economy operating, so these so-called formal institutes or formal businesses now have to compete with these informal institutes or informal businesses. And what that has done in KP to some extent is that some businesses just either go again back to informal channels, they just stop reporting their sales, or they shut down, which is the worst case scenario. Because when you're thinking of taxation, it's not just about raising revenue. The first goal should be to promoting economic growth, to making sure the business can thrive in the environment. So selective technology, I think the selective uptake or uptake of technology could really hurt businesses, because now they have to compete with businesses which are not integrated, which are not part of the system. So really, I think the part of the work that we're doing in Punjab is also about thinking about the system approach to taxation, not just, okay, if you integrate one business and assume that everything's going to work. I think I think the broader message I would want to draw from this is we need a big push of compliance. So it's good that they have this tier approach that FBR has been implementing, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But again, if you work in a system where there's a lot of informal businesses competing with you, then I think it sort of makes sense to rationalize and make sure that businesses do not get competed out because they're part of the tech system. Let me. I think I just really wanted to contribute these 2 points. We are doing a lot of work with I think one project that we've been working on with Urban Unit is about I'm linking it to behavioral insights. It's about how we can improve the efficiency of excise and taxation inspectors by using IT, by using information that is already there. So excise department house images of actually Urban Unit house images of various properties. So we are trying that whether we can use machine learning techniques to predict various features of properties which feed into tax formula and see whether that can help improve efficiency of tax inspectors in maybe identifying properties for reassessment or when calculating the liabilities of those assessments. So those are all the work that we are working on with the assistance of excise, with the assistance of Urban Unit, and the hope is that over time these can improve efficiency and help improve compliance. So let me stop here. I think that's what I wanted to
Thank you, Doctor. I think that was great. Thank you very much for the valuable insights. And we have reached the end of our session, session 3, and I think there's going to be a lunch break, Umar, most probably. So we'll not drag it on. But thank you, everyone, for a very lively discussion. Digitization and technology generally is a very dry topic, and whenever we are speaking about it, we are very mindful that a lot of people would be fish out of the water when they're talking about IT. But thank you. It was a very lively discussion, a lot of insights. I hope everyone would benefit from that. Thank you once again. I think we can take a lunch break. Thank you.